Great. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2022 Hot Topics Environmental Law Summer Lecture Series. I'm Kevin Jones, and I direct our Institute for Energy and the Environment here at VLS. And I'm super pleased we're able to have this. Is this our first in-person Hot Topics lecture in how long? a long time. So it's great to be back here in person. And the series will take place every Tuesday and Thursday at noon through the first week of August. Each talk is worth one Vermont CLE, so please sign the attendance roster at the back of the room if you're looking to keep track of your CLEs. And please hold your questions, and we'll have time for Q&A after today's presentation. Because the event is open to the public, no food is allowed today, unlike past years here at Hot Topics Lecture. So we're going to begin the summer's hot topic by welcoming back Christopher Root. Mr. Root joined the Vermont Electric Power Company as Chief Operating Officer in March 2014, and before that he served as Senior Vice President of Network Strategy at National Grid, amongst many other experiences in the industry. Mr. Root holds a master's 7th year in the summer program where he teaches engineering essentials of the electric grid. And one of the things I must say, I remember every year because it's been 7 years of students telling me how happy they are with Chris's class, and he's got a unique skill in terms of being able to simplify a very complex system and make it enjoyable for your students. So thank you very much for that, Chris. Today, Chris will present on the changes the electric grid needs to meet our clean energy futures, and I'm super excited to see it, and join me in welcoming Chris Root.
Thank you, Kevin. I assume you're working? Got me? So if not, I speak loud, but I want to make sure I'm also being recorded. Okay? All right, thanks. Thank you, Kevin. I always enjoy and look forward to this week coming here. I love to be able to bring new information to you about what's going on in the industry and some of the challenges as we continue to decarbonize the power system, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and some of the things that are happening in Vermont. So I'm going to do this from a Vermont perspective. And why do I do that? Because Vermont is very, very progressive, not just politically, but also on an energy front. And Vermont is a small state. And as a result, as part of it being a small state, their ability to do things quickly and things that make a big difference can happen very rapidly. And they have. So what we like to coin a VELCO, and VELCO is the electric transmission company in the state of Vermont, is that Vermont is the electrical workshop for the rest of the continental U.S., because the things we do here have not been seen. And as I like to call it, I said we're like the Hawaii of the East Coast, okay? And our mountains don't blow up either. So Hawaii is another one that has very high levels of solar and renewable energy, and a lot of things are getting studied in Hawaii. But we have the similar type thing here in Vermont, right? So, but we have other things that they don't have in Hawaii, like snow, which is a big deal. And I'll talk about that. How do you deal with the winter if you're going to rely on renewable energy that is weather dependent? We'll talk a little bit about that. All right, so I'm going to get started and talk about, Vermont, right? Beautiful, beautiful Vermont. It is one of the most beautiful states here. It is small. Electrically, it's small, 1,000 megawatts, which is really nice that it's a nice round number. It's really easy to make your statistics look really easy to do. So it's about 1,000 megawatts. And that is both the peak load in the summer and the winter. It's the same. Cold winter night after dark, we peak. In a hot summer day after dark, we are the only state in New England that peaks out after dark. The rest of New England does not, it used to be 2 o'clock in the afternoon after 3 days of heat wave. I could set my time, and I ran operations a long time. I knew exactly when the rest of New England was going to peak. 3 days of a heat wave, the third day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, as long as it wasn't a Friday. Because Friday's the load actually drops off in the afternoon. So people take off, it's too hot, going to the beach, whatever, taking a half day off, whatever. So, so that would happen, not anymore. Totally different scenario, fast forward. Now the overall New England load is 530 because of the solar, but it's creeping towards going after dark. It will be after dark in a few years as more and more solar happens, but that's the way it is in Vermont right now. After dark every day is our peak. That is unusual, okay? California is that way, though, after dark already. So we have 400 megawatts worth of solar in the state of Vermont. That's 40% of our peak load of solar plants, okay? Now, the largest one is only 20 megawatts. So we don't have big ones. In California, in the Arizona desert, they have 400 megawatt plants. Of course, they have tons of land, and it's flat, and they have huge plants out there. We don't. It takes 5 acres to generate 1 megawatt. 5 acres per megawatt for solar. So it's, we every day import 225 megawatts, about 22% of our peak load actually comes from Canada through Hydro-Quebec. And we have a converter terminal at the border that converts. If you take my class, we'll talk about why you have to do an HVDC, but it's a DC connection that we have with Hydro-Quebec to bring power down from that. The other unique thing about Vermont is there are 4,000 Tesla Powerwalls. Kevin owns 2 of them in his house, but there's 4,000 of these battery storage devices in garages and houses. Very, very unique. Very unique, and I'll talk a lot about that and why we use it for. We also have bigger storage, right? You need storage in many cases, and we have bigger ones, utility ones. There's several actually under construction right now, several that are under that, okay? And I'll show you our duck curve, quote unquote duck curve, and I'll explain what that is, but shows that in the last couple of weeks, I think it was 2 weeks ago, our minimum load was in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, and we were 180 megawatts, which is the lowest amount by far ever in the state, because all the solar, not much people using electricity, was very low. I'd say in about 2 years we will actually be, for the first time, Vermont never is self-sufficient, hasn't been self-sufficient since the nuclear plant shut down in 2014. We always buy power from other people every single hour of the day. The first hour will be within 2 years on a Saturday or Sunday in April when the sun is shining and all that solar we keep adding on. We'll do that. We'll actually do that for the first time, which would be a really big deal, okay? But our nameplate is 80% of all our peak load. The problem with the nameplate is it doesn't work at night, some of it. The wind doesn't always blow, all this stuff. So I'll talk more about that. But the other thing I would say that Vermont has a good plan and has had a good plan. So 95% of Vermonters have a smart meter on their house. That is not the case everywhere in the US, okay? A lot of that money came from the original Obama administration smart grid funding that they did $6 billion worth of spending on that to improve the grid. And Vermont got more of it got a big share of that, so they did that. They also put in a fiber optic system as the first part of that came from that grant. And now we have 1,900 miles of fiber optic connections that we run the grid with. Independent of outside help. It's a privately run one, very secure system of fiber optics that we do. And we also are involved with the state about helping out the underserved internet areas of Vermont in the Northeast Kingdom. We can get them backhaul, we can get them interconnections. They are doing various types of co-op systems to get internet to every single person in Vermont, a reliable internet connection to everyone in Vermont. And that will happen in the next couple years. And we're adding another 500 miles, I guess, of more fiber in the next couple years for them, but also for the utilities needs. So, part of the reason you need a safe internet is that long term, we're going to have to be able to control loads better than we do today. Not to control them to penalize or involve the people, but as you see, and I talk about different technologies, the grid is going to take a long time to catch up to this increase in electric loads. So the state has also been very progressive, and I did use this slide at the IEEE T&D conference, which was attended by 15,000 people last month, to talk about a little bit about Vermont. But their plan, they have a comprehensive energy plan, and some of you may have seen this. You can get it online. It just got updated by the state last year. And their goals are 90% renewable of all energy used by 2050. I do think that may change a little bit, not because of the renewable component of it, but I do think eventually it's going to have to say carbon-free instead of renewable. I mean, the nuclear plants do play an important role in what's going on if you're going to decarbonize the electric system. And they have target areas for transportation, thermal, and electric. The electric ones are pretty much carbon-free now. Most of the utilities in here, we do have a couple oil-based peak plants that only run in an emergency. Only time, very few hours a year. They may run for 20 hours in the whole year for emergency electric reliability, but that's it. But basically, most of the people are pretty much renewable energy-based or carbon-free based. A couple of the bigger utilities have contracts with the Seabrook nuclear power plant, which is carbon-free, but it's good pricing on the nuclear plant, and it runs all the time and without any carbon. So I do think we may have to adjust some of those. That's my own personal opinion because of the renewable issues. So what I'm showing here is the forecast, and this forecast comes from a study that VELCO, the transmission utility, is required to do every 3 years, is to put out a report that projects needs for the transmission system and what the loads will be over 20 years. So this is 2020 to 2040. And we worry about the summer, and we're going to worry about the winter, both, right? So we're both the same. And what this shows is the increase that we expect to see over the next couple of years, and what is the big increases? The big increases will be heat pumps, all right? As we electrify the heating system, Vermont still 22% comes from wood-burning stoves. Most people have propane or oil as their heating system if they don't have wood. Very few people, except people who live in Chittenden County, have access to natural gas, so they don't. So most of the state is either propane, oil, or wood for heating, right? All carbon-based systems, and that's going to be the biggest challenge they have. If you go to heat pumps work well in the off seasons, I will say, but when it's 20 below zero, a heat pump is going to have a hard time heating your house. So you have to have still a backup system, but you've reduced your carbon footprint quite a bit. But there is an expected huge increase in people having heat pumps in Vermont, which will add more electric load to it. The other thing has to do with the heat pumps. When you buy a heat pump to heat your house, you get air conditioning for a byproduct. So what does that say? That says the summer load, if you can just touch the button and get air conditioning, you don't have to go in the basement and get the window air conditioner and pull it out, put it in the window, all that stuff. You just turn the button and you got air conditioning. People will use it if they have it, which will drive electric demand in the summertime up. It's a consequence, it's just human nature, right? I'm willing to pay for it, I'm gonna do it. So when you look at the summer forecast, and the top line is the total load, okay? And if it wasn't for heat pumps and electric vehicles, I'm sorry, the other one's electric vehicles. If it wasn't for those two things, the load would be that blue line, which would be about 1,000 megawatt, maybe 1%. We've been growing about 1% electric without these changes coming down the pike, but these changes have a big change over, when you look at out 20 years, it's a big change. So that's a big change. And basically it's being driven by electric vehicle charging and then the heat pumps. But the electric vehicle charging is going to be the big one, okay? And most people may not realize this, but the average house may use 8 or 9 kW, about the size of an average house, peak and stuff. If you get a level 2 charger in your garage, you hook it up with 240 and you're going to run it every day, That's the same as the rest of the house. You've doubled your electric load with your electric vehicle charger. Your largest single appliance now, by far, is that charger of the car. Okay? So you live in a trailer. There's a lot of mobile homes in Vermont. The electric system can't handle it. There's a lot of talk in the legislature about funding ways to up them from 100 amp service to a 200 amp service. You have to have a 200 amp service in your house. If you don't have that, if you have an old farmhouse, you have to change out your main panel, which means the utility probably has to run new wire to your house and all those things. But there's infrastructure that's going to have to be enabled to allow you to have an electric vehicle, okay? Or you have to have a level 1 charger, which will take you forever to charge, right? So it's not going to help you there. So the summer and the winter. Now, in the winter, the load is higher, and part of that really is that, A, you'll be running your heat pumps. They're going to run like crazy when it's cold. But also, your electric vehicle. So the distance you can drive an electric vehicle in Vermont in the wintertime is significantly less than the summertime. In some cases, up to half the mileage you're going to get. You have to charge it. You're going to use more battery life. Your charging is going to be longer in the night, if you're going to charge at night, to recharge it up so you can drive in the morning. So you can use a lot more energy in the wintertime for your electric charging than you are in the summertime. So that's just the way the batteries technology today works. It just takes more energy to run a car in the wintertime. So you'll see higher. So our 1,000 megawatts in the winter and the summer could be between 1,400 and 1,500. That's a 50% increase. That is huge. That's a huge number. That's a big number. So that means a lot of things are going to have to change or have new approaches to. That's part of the things I'm going to talk about. So I actually have concluded this, and I did give this to Courtney Collins, has a copy of this that if somebody needs, and I know Kevin will get a copy of this too. Shows that heat pump demand, okay? That's what the demand is expected. And they have like a low and a high for both summer and winter, because now you're having a heating device you're going to use summer and winter. So your oil heat only usually, unless you're doing hot water with it, only runs half the year, right? And now you're going to have a heating device that'll run all year long. One of the things that are different in summer and winter is how those things use electricity. So I've shown some things there. Surprisingly, what history has shown and what studies have shown is that people, when they get their heat pump, they're most excited. It isn't about running it in the winter. They're most excited about running it in the summer. So their demand for in the summer evenings where they may have toughed it out with the fan, no way now anymore. Forget the fans, we're turning on the AC. So that shows that in the winter, summertime, the cooling, people use it a lot for cooling. I'll talk more about the solar shape, but remember the solar only runs during the day. The electric vehicle charging is obviously greater. It's funny that it's actually, that's a weekend versus a weekday load charge. So people, they tend to be charging more, maybe more in the weekday than they would on the weekends, because they may drive less on the weekends. If they're driving and commuting, that type of thing. That's just based on national information. So to meet our objectives in the state, you have to sell a lot of electric cars. Anybody who's tried to buy one, good luck. It takes forever to get one right now. We have supply chain issues. We have battery issues. We have a lot of issues. There's a lot of headwinds about dissemination of electric vehicles, and hopefully those will get sorted out. There's something like 30 new models that are supposed to come out in the next year from different manufacturers. The whole holdup is batteries. There was 100,000 vehicle backlog for the F-150 Lightning that they advertise on TV and you can run your house with. That's kind of sounds good, okay? That lasts about 5 minutes before you drain the battery in your truck. And by the way, you drain your battery in your truck, the lights are still out and you can't drive your truck anymore. So just remember that. If you use all your thing to run your party and run your TV and you run your battery down your truck and the power's still out, you can't drive. So just be careful what you do with that energy. People are going to learn that real fast. So that's a nice gimmick. But I mean, It's different. I mean, but the battery could do that, and it can do that if you wire it up correctly. But the issue is new registrations are really needed a lot. And by 2040, it could be like 40%. Like I always said, the reason that announced that 8 months ago, they haven't delivered a single one yet. One of those. So they're having issues, right, of getting supply chain, getting batteries, getting chips. Chips is a big deal. But that's a big deal. I always said you're not going to go anywhere with electric vehicles in Vermont until you can do a pickup truck. Until you can get a pickup truck, it isn't going to work because whatever, a third of our vehicles in Vermont are pickup trucks. So, so that's going to be somewhat of an issue. So, but we have a long ways to go on electric vehicles and charging and everything else that goes with it. But the good news is, as that gets delayed, we need to do some other things. I'll tell you a joke. I took my class out and we looked at the transformer out front, and the transformer is what supplies your houses. And if two houses, I joke, if you have a transformer and you go out and buy an electric vehicle and your neighbor is jealous and realizes that, oh, you know, the neighbor's got an electric vehicle, we're going to get an electric vehicle. You both get an electric vehicle. You both try to come home and plug them in at the same time. You know, that's a problem. The transformer's going to probably fail. It's not sized that big. So the utility industry is having a real challenge of, we didn't size any of these transformers for people doubling their house loads, right? And that's a problem, all right? Particularly where in some cases in the more urbanized areas where they share transformers, that's a major problem. So the next thing I want to talk about is the change in generation. So we have to generate electricity at the same time people use it. All the time, instantaneously at the same level. In New England is a market and is run as the 6-state region. Today, right now, as we speak, the percentage of our energy that comes from natural gas today, this is today's market, 69%. 20% is coming from nuclear. That's because one of the nuclear plants is out. Typically, it's about 30%, 28, 29% usually nuclear. The 3 nuclear plants, 2 in Connecticut, 1 in New Hampshire, they run all the time. There's one's out for maintenance and refueling, but typically run all the time. Good low price, no carbon. It's a good thing that we have them. That's all I'm going to say. Mostly natural gas. No coal, no oil. Happy to say that, but that wasn't the case. And I told my class this, that just 10 years ago, in the United States of America, over 50% of electricity was generated with coal. Today it's 19. Last year it was 19. It's on its way to 0. It will be 0 in the next couple of years. It's going to be 0, which is think about it, 50% of the whole United States to go from 50% to 0 in probably 15 years is unbelievable. So as much as we like to bitch about it, that is a huge thing. Now people want to say that it's because of environmental reasons. Be honest, economics. Cheap natural gas killed coal. I'll be honest. I mean, environmental considerations were huge, but the reality of it is natural gas is cheaper. The problem with 69% of the energy coming from natural gas, 2 things. 4 pipelines into New England, just 4. And in the wintertime, when southern New England is powering most of their houses heated by natural gas in southern New England, those pipelines are pretty much at capacity. They don't have a lot of reserve capacity to fund generators. So the couple of coal plants that we still have run when it's very cold in the wintertime for a couple weeks. The oil plants that typically never run, only run in the wintertime when natural gas doesn't have enough capacity. If we had another gas pipeline, we would not be running those plants, but that's not going to happen because of political reasons. I'm just going to leave it at that. The governor of New York said he would never allow a pipeline across. Just to say that at one point in time, the most expensive natural gas in the entire world was in Boston, Massachusetts. During the winter time, we store energy in liquefied natural gas tanks all over southern New England, and they use that to meet the peak load of natural gas heating in the winter. And they take ships of liquefied natural gas ships into Boston Harbor, and they unload them there, and they truck them around all summertime, all summer long, so that they can meet the gas demand in the wintertime. There's not enough room in those gas pipelines to serve that, and none for electric generation, or not enough for electric generation. So so the most expensive place was in Boston a few years ago, 2018, and guess where the cheapest place was in the whole world? Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or western Pennsylvania. Why is that? They frack gas there. It was really cheap. Can't get there from here. There's no pipeline from there to here. So we had the most expensive and the cheapest natural gas within 300 miles of each other, and you couldn't get there. And it's just frustrating that you couldn't do it. Nobody could ever do it. No, we're not going to do it now. It's just not going to happen. So until something bad happens, I guess. So, so the point, though, of these charts here is to show the percentage of generation at different points. And the thing I want to say is, so in March of last year, it said that natural gas 56, like I said, 69% today. Nuclear was 28%, which is typical. 9% renewable. Today, 9% renewable today, too. You have some clouds out there, which is hurting us a little bit. 9% today. We still got in New England, 6 states. We still got a long ways to go. We're putting in solar like crazy, but we still have a long ways to go. Remember, the solar only works when the sun's shining. It doesn't work at night, so you cut that out. So if you look at the generation for the day, you have to make up for all that solar. 7% is hydro in this case. So nothing was else running in that. That was in March. If we were to go back to January, middle of the winter time, then this we came very close to having a problem. Very close to having a problem at this time in the beginning of January 5th in 2018. I mean, turn people's lights off type problem because of lack of generation. At that time, so we were curtailed to natural gas to 38%, which was pretty good, but they told us if it kept going, they were shutting it off, some of the natural gas supplies. The nuclear was still there, thank God, and but we were running the coal plants. 6% came from the coal plant in Bow, New Hampshire. 500 megawatts there. There was also a lot of oil plants running. 11% were oil plants being run, which are dirty too, but we needed it. The lights would have gone out without those two. The concern is that over future, we're not going to have those other options. The coal plant will go away. The oil plants will go away. But what are you going to fill it with? And if you're going to say, well, either do more renewables, then you have to figure a way to get you through the night. And I'm going to show you some data later on that says it's not just through the night you have to get through in the wintertime. And if you're going to use natural gas, I would argue that you probably need another pipeline or something else in New England to cover you for the next few years until you can get your renewables straightened out. So this is a duck curve, okay? This was made famous in California. It looks messy. It's 24 hours a day. So it goes from 12 o'clock to 12 o'clock, middle of the night. People wake up in the morning, start using electricity. It goes up, okay? And this is Vermont low. This is the state of Vermont. Goes up in the night, and this is in April. Oh, what happens? The sun rises. Guess what? All that solar starts using all those rooftops. The electricity load goes down. Every one of those years is a different year, starting like around 2010, something like that, 15. So 15, 16, 17, every year it's lower, lower, lower in the middle of the day. Why? More solar. Keep adding more solar, keep adding more solar. This is down to 200 and something, which is 2022. 2 weeks later, it was actually 180. Okay, we're getting closer and closer to being zero. It'll only be for a bit time, but over time it should be better, only during the middle of the day. Your lowest amount of electricity is used when the sun shines in the middle of the day in Vermont. That's the cheapest energy you can possibly get. Charge your cars in the afternoon. Don't go anywhere at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, charge your cars then. That's the best time to charge your cars. Oh, we don't do that. We come home from work and we charge them in. So what happens, the sun goes down, electric usage comes up. After dark, our peak load for the day is after dark. Okay, that's when you're going to cook, that's when you're going to use your lights, your TV, charge your car maybe. Hopefully you don't charge it right then. You do that thing. So now, the very top one is a rainy day. The top line's a rainy day. Holy smokes, what a difference between rain and snow, rain and sun, all right? How's that? 400 megawatts difference between a sunny day and a rainy day. You're trying to run a power system. How much power do I need? What's the weather? How much do I trust the weathermen? I don't know about you, but I've been doing weather for a long time. I don't trust any of them more than a day, even then, right? And you're trying to balance this every time. So that is the difference between a rainy day and a sunny day in Vermont in the springtime. Big difference. It's hard. You have to fill that up with natural gas, right? So when you're not doing the sun, you're buying natural gas power. Okay? Those are your two choices. Right. So what have we done? We've done a lot of solar in Vermont. A lot more is coming on. This is a chart that shows that there's certain zones have more capacity. You can put more solar in those areas without spending a lot of money. And we publish those to tell people, put the solar in these places and you don't have to spend a lot of money. If you put them in these places, like up north, which has the cheap land, which everybody wants to go to, there's a constraint up there. That's a problem. They weren't giving permits there. I could go and talk a lot of why technically, but we're trying to fix that. In the next couple of years, we'll fix that so they can put them back up there. They want them up there. There's cheap land up there. There's less trees up there. The place to go, but can't do it right now. Southern, great place to put it in the southern part of the state. What's down the southern part of the state? A lot of mountains, a lot of trees. Really want to cut down trees to put solar in because trees actually help carbon issue because they take in carbon. And then the other chart is the Green Mountain Power's capability. The red places is don't put solar here. I got no capacity. The green areas said put solar here. It's a good place to put it. You know, I got room in the power system. So this is like really cool stuff to do that. The other chart there is Burlington Electric, showing where they are and where they have the capacity to add more. All right. Did a study with the Vermont University, Northern University, and it was actually done by Northview Weather. It's actually a spinoff from the university. It's a private company now. Northview Weather. Jay Schaefer from used to be Lyndon State University. They have a weather program there. He was the head of it. And we modeled the solar, and I wanted to know how reliable is this solar, and what are my problems going to be? So we have different types of it, and unfortunately, one of the things about Vermont, it snows here, right? We love the snow. Ski areas love the snow, but it snows. So we have solar and snow. What does that mean? So this is an annual output. The blue line on this is January to the end of December, every kind of 10-day period, okay? And we tracked the amount of solar that was generated versus the maximum amount you could possibly get. And guess what? Very rarely do you ever get the maximum amount. There's a couple, one that goes above it. But basically, we simulated what it could be if every solar panel would it capture the maximum amount that it could. And that's what that blue line is, right? Of course, in December, it's much less because you have less hours. In December, in the summertime, it's kind of consistent. But you never get to, it's never perfect. That's my point. It's never perfect. You always have clouds. You always have things go on that isn't never perfect. So this complicated chart is, so I asked the question, how many days a year in the wintertime, in the last 3 years in Vermont, has there been no solar production at all and no wind? We have 18% of our peak load can be by wind. We have wind plants in the southern part of the state. We have wind plants in the northern part of the state. We have 180 megawatts worth of wind. Tell me how many days consecutively I've had no wind and no solar. The last 3 years, 5 days. After a snowstorm. What happens after a snowstorm in Vermont? You get a nor'easter comes up the coast, dumps us with snow. We get a lot of snow. And as it goes off to Nova Scotia, it pulls around the cold air from Canada, and it gets cold after it snows. The snow doesn't have a chance to melt off right away. It stays on there for a few days. Eventually, it'll melt off and fall off. In the meantime, and you have only so many hours of daylight, right, during the wintertime. Less hours in daylight to melt it off, so it takes longer to melt off. So you have this issue. But I'm just telling you right now, you've got a lot of days, and because the answer to a lot of people is, we'll just have storage. 5 days with the storage for the whole state? That isn't going to cut it with Tesla Powerwalls in your basement. No way. That is a hugely expensive process. I mean, you could do pump storage maybe. Does anybody want to take a couple mountains and dam them up and build water, use water storage? I mean, this is a problem that has to be solved if you're going to go 100% renewable. And I don't think anybody has a solution to it yet. I don't think anybody's even talking about it. All right? That's the problem in the Northeast. It's not Arizona. Okay? So storage does happen. I'm an advocate of storage. I love storage. But to solve that problem, I'm not sure how traditional storage is going to work. There were 2,000 megawatts worth of storage that's run by ISO New England, and they're pump storage. They're huge mountains that were hollowed out, and they pump the water up, and then let the water run down. And then they pump it back up, and they run down. Same thing as a battery. Charge it, and then discharge it. Do the same thing with water, right? It's about 70% efficient. They've been doing it since they put the nuclear plants in the 1960s, because in the middle of the night, different rule, the middle of the night, they didn't know, nuclear plants only have one speed, and they were worried in the middle of the night, nobody was using electricity, what are they going to do with the nuclear power plant power? What are they going to do with it? Throw it away? They didn't know what to do with it. So they said, oh, we'll pump water up, and then during the day when people wake up, we'll run the water back down, and we've used the energy, cheap energy at night, and during the day we use the energy to make electricity. It was a really good plan. Those plants still work. They're great, except they rock opposite. Okay? Now we charge them during the day. We pump during the day when the solar's running, and we run it down at night. Or run it down as the sun goes down. As the sun goes down, we run it down. Okay? So Green Mountain Power has installed 4,000 power walls. Kevin has 2 of them in his basement. Okay? They're not huge, but they will last. They sold and they're leased as an uninterruptible power supply, $15 a month per wall. You lose your lights. You'll keep your lights on because your battery will supply your house. It's cool. It's really good. It'll last for a day, maybe. Just be careful. Be careful. Don't charge your car with it. That'll be the end of it. But be careful. But you can run a couple of days. You can run your heating system. You can flush your toilet. You probably, you can use your well. I mean, important stuff in Vermont. So do that without having to run a generator. So that's really cool. So why does the utility do that? They do that for this reason. So they get a bill. Every utility in Vermont pays a share of the transmission system. The transmission system in New England is shared, and every utility shares it based on their peak load for the month. That sets your percentage of a big bill. And if you can drop that down a few percent, save people a lot of money. So what do? So those power walls are controllable. Kevin's is controllable by Green Mountain Power. And they have the ability, I think, 3 times a month to drain it. So this is the peak load in the wintertime of this winter, okay? In January, it was really cold. This orange thing, different scales. The orange is the New England electric load, all 6 states. Superimposed on this orange yellow one is the load in Vermont. Different scales, right? So I'll be honest. What happens? What happened up there? They turned all the batteries on. And what happened? It flattened out the load. Your most expensive and dirtiest electric generation is at peak, because you're using the cats and dogs, the crappy ones, because you have nothing else left. All the efficient ones and clean ones have already been used up. They're already online. So you go into the coal plant. Oh, I'll turn on all the batteries. That saved customers a lot of money. So that system, they figured a way to make money off the batteries that saves all customers money by turning them all on for a couple hours. Now, they have to recharge them now, so to be honest, those are recharging. Eventually they recharge them all, so they're using energy off-peak, but you've shaved off that peak, which you have to do. That's called demand management. That is a great way to demand manage. Put those batteries and use them to do that. Now, Kevin has to charge his, when they drain his, he has to charge them back up every so many times a month. But they try to do that about every year. And then once a year, when all New England hits their peak, that 1 hour sets a huge bill for your percentage of the generation bill. And if you can shave there, which they do everything they can do to shave the peak right there in Vermont, Now, have we saved any money? For Vermont, yes, but all we've done is made the other states pay. We said the other states are too big and too stupid to realize what we're doing to them. But we've shifted the cost to them for that time, and it saves all the Vermont customers money. It's like, better to be smarter than bigger. So that's where small and nimble beats out big and not as smart. So, okay. So I can say that because I worked in those states for a long time. So it's really cool. It's just a really cool thing. So storage is critical. It's important, but it's expensive, and you need a lot of it. So we're going to have to figure out ways to do that. But if you're going to combine it with the carbon-free stuff, you have to do it. And the other thing is you can't, I didn't put a chart in here, but I'll just tell you, when clouds come over solar plants, I mean, the output drops way down. About 50% gets dropped when a cloud comes over. Then it goes back up. So it's bouncing around the outputs like that, and you're trying to run a power system based on you don't know what the supply is going to be. So having storage there will help mitigate that, smooth that out. It's a lot easier to run a power system that way. Let's make it a little simple. So in the end, my conclusion is we're moving more to weather-dependent generation. Live by the weather, you die by the weather. You can't predict the weather. You need better prediction models to do that. At the same time, we have to be able to recognize that things are going to happen and take steps to do that. We will have to rebuild more transmission. We will have to rebuild feeders on the distribution level to allow more solar on them. We're going to have to. We have to manage what you use at different times. But it can be managed without bothering anybody, which is one of the things utilities have not been good historically have done. They haven't been good at that. But there are ways to control water heating and other things that you won't bother anybody. There are ways to do it, and I do think we're going to have to sell customers on the ability it's best for everyone to manage their loads without actually doing anything. You don't have to do your laundry at 2 in the morning. You don't have to do anything. We'll turn your car on, and we'll put your neighbor's car on from 1 to 2, and we'll put your car on from 2 to 3, and we'll manage the thing that we won't have to rebuild the circuit of 2 miles of circuits for a lot of money. There's ways to do it. Decarbonization goals are important, but we have to recognize that we're probably going to be tied to natural gas for a while. I just don't see it any other way around it. But it's a lot better than coal or oil. And storage will play a role in it, and a lot of things are happening now. So with that, I just wanted to thank you all for your time. Hopefully, this data, you wouldn't necessarily see this. I mean, this is stuff that is unique to Vermont and makes the points that I would want to make. So thank you all for listening to me. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, we have a few minutes for questions. Any questions for Chris? I'll bring you the microphone.
I never ask questions in Hot Topics. This is a little scary, but my husband is a plumber, and he installs a lot of heat pumps, and he's not a fan of them for the reasons that you mentioned, that people start using a lot more air conditioning. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on how we could discourage the use of air conditioning? Because in Vermont, it really doesn't get that hot that many days.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, to be honest, I have air conditioning in my house, and if I run it 3 times a year, it's a lot. I mean, I think it's mostly just a educational thing, right? Do you really need it, or do you really want it, or run it for a few hours and turn it off? And that's the thing, they just set it and let it go. That's really one of the big issues, I think. I do think that people don't always appreciate heat pumps. They think they're turning off their furnace forever. They're not. When it's really cold, the heat pump is not going to heat your house to the level you would like. I think they lose sight of that sometimes. Oh, now I'll skip to have the oil guy and check my oil furnace. And then when you go to do it in January and it doesn't come on because you didn't do the maintenance on it because you have a heat pump now, I think a lot of people have a little surprise. They don't like to tell you that you still need your secondary heat source that well.
I would think, Chris, on that though, also, I mean, when people are using the air conditioning, we're having a lot of solar on the system, so it is low carbon electricity and relatively affordable electricity at that point in time. So it doesn't
have. Just argue, when do you use the heat pump most? Is when you go to bed. So the sun's down. So yeah, and during the day, absolutely. So the other thing is to run it and during the day, and then turn it up at night, because at night you're using other fuel. You're running on natural gas. Think of it this way, you're running on natural gas at night.
We still have a little bit of time. Any additional questions?
Hello. I'm a native Texan, and as we've all seen, that the infrastructure there for renewables is it's not built to withstand extreme weather or changing weather. So as electric demand increases in Vermont, does the existing system, is it prepared for that increase in changing weather, or will things have to be updated and improved in order to maintain the increasing load?
So, good question. So I'm going to answer that a couple different ways. First off, if you're talking about climate changes, I did a study last year for 40 years out, climate change, and basically said we're in pretty good shape that way. Our design standards don't have to be changed. We're in pretty good shape. Have a little growing season changes so that the people who trim the trees probably going to have to shorten the times they have to trim in between because you have a bigger growing season and you have more tree growth. In terms of things like wind and water, flooding could be a potential issue if you have more rain, but we looked at every one of our substations, none of them were in flood zones. Every one of them would be okay, and we did some stuff to make sure of that. So I feel pretty good on climate change. Your other part of your question, though, on Texas. So I just talked about this in my class this morning on the Texas situation. The Texas situation was that cold that happened, that the gas pipelines failed. They froze in the gas pipeline system, didn't work. And the wind was expected to be off. They do a lot of wind in western Texas, right, as you know, but none of them have winter protection on them, which is a mistake. Vermont ones do. But they don't down there, and somebody needs to order them to change that, and they need to put blades that have the ability to have ice come off them. That's an issue. It happened 10 years ago. This wasn't the first time it happened. It happened 10 years ago before that. And they had recommendations, but not mandatory, and a lot of the, I'll say the private equity-owned generators just didn't do them. Didn't do all of them. And then we were right back into it last year. And I went through the whole thing this morning in my class, but it was really a case of not having, the generators tripped off. It wasn't the distribution system, it was the generators tripped off. The wind they knew was going to be off, but the natural gas system failed. Because it was overloaded, because people were trying to heat their houses, and some of the pipelines froze up. And they froze up because instrumentation was out in the atmosphere, and they literally froze. And that was the problem. The Texas thing, they need to get real about winterizing their system. That was.
Is better.
Yes. Oh yeah, we're used to winter. We're used to that. I don't see that being an issue for us. I don't see that being an issue. Now, we are going to have to build new transmission lines if we keep building like a lot of solar up north. We have a transmission project that's going to improve flow from the north to the south. Most of our flow, it comes to south-north, except in where they want to put all the renewables. Just to give you an idea, there's 500 megawatts of renewables in the Northeast Kingdom, and the amount of people that electric load there is 50. 10 times more generation than what people live there, because we have the wind farms there, we have the converter terminal bringing in from Canada renewables, and we have a lot of solar. We stopped allowing more solar to put on there. People wanted to put more solar, they wouldn't allow it because we couldn't get it out. It needs more ways to get out. And the way the regulations are structured today, they say, well, it's not a reliability problem, it's just a generation problem. Well, yes, but you need to figure out if you're going to enable renewable and want to encourage renewables, you've got to build the transmission to do it.
That's a vulnerability in Texas as well.
Right.
It has a more isolated.
I will say, though, Texas did something that no other state, like California kind of did it, but Texas the one who did it. They built a transmission line to nowhere into western Texas. They built this transmission line to nowhere, and they said, put your wind out there. And you know what? Huge wind farms developed because they had free transmission interconnection to sell their power into Dallas area, into the more populated areas. That was brilliant. And the state subsidized that and paid for it. And that model, I do think is gonna be adopted throughout the rest of the United States, is the state, you know, it's some of this money coming DOA, there's gonna be billions of dollars gonna be funneled to the states to give out, to do that, enabling things. Build a transmission in a place where people wanna put solar plants, they'll put solar plants there, if you give them. Right now, the cost of building that transmission line may have been $1 billion. No wind farm is gonna pay for that, right? So if you built it, they will come. That's what happened in Western. Now, the bad news is the farms that they built there were not built to withstand a cold day, which was a huge mistake. But they did build a lot. 12% of all the energy in Texas can be generated from those wind farms that were built just because they built that transmission line there. That was brilliant. I always thought it was brilliant, but we had the situation, that was a big mistake.
Great. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and we're going to have to, we need to break to let people go. But Trevor, you can ask Chris in the hallway. I'm saving my question on offshore wind and what you think about that for next year when you come back. But I'd like to ask you all to give Chris a big warm applause for his talk today and for his many years of excellent support of our energy program.
So Kevin, so the Block Island